Before February of last year, no one here today or in Ardessa knew me. Before February of last year, not a single person here could have known that I was released from prison a month before. So you would have no way of knowing that 7 months earlier, on July 6, 2009, I had locked myself in an inner room of the house and sat in the dark with a gun in my mouth. I was empty inside and all hope was gone. I was drinking over a gallon of whiskey every 3 days. I was being evicted. I had a 19-year-old daughter that wanted nothing to do with me. I was at such a point of insanity, and that's what alcoholism is. It's insanity. I was at such a point of insanity that the only reason I didn't take the 7-cent way out was because it would have made such a mess of my fiance's life that I couldn't bear to leave her one more mess to clean up when she got home from work. I decided I had to quit drinking, so I did. The only way I can describe my condition would be like in the movies where you have a coma patient who's lying there. He can hear what's going on around him, but he is unable to communicate. Trapped inside my head, screaming in my mind, I'm here. This isn't me. I'm here. You don't go from sleeping no more than 3 hours at a time and having to get up to get a drink to quitting cold turkey. I realized that about 15 hours later and knew I needed help. By the time I got to Two Rivers Hospital, I hadn't had a drink in over 24 hours, and I was in a DTs so hard that my fiance had to hold my wrist down so I could scratch my name on the admission forms. I was there for 8 days. I was afraid of getting out. I was afraid of myself, and I was on 7 different medications. The day I got out, I had one night at home before going to inpatient rehab. That night, on the way to get all my prescriptions filled, pulling out of the drive, we accidentally ran over and killed my dog. 20 seconds earlier, I had decided not to take Buck with me because I was in a hurry to get to the pharmacy before it closed. It took over 9 months before I was finally able to cry for him. Through 30 days of rehab, my biggest fear was getting out. After rehab, I went to a sober living community and back to work. On Tuesday, September 8th, 2009, my probation officer had me arrested because while in detox and rehab, I hadn't paid my child support. $750, less than 2 months' worth. I told her I got my first check back to work that Friday and I could pay it up current. Didn't matter. I sat a month in Daviess County Jail in Pattonsburg until court on October 8th. At court, the judge revoked my 5-year probation. I had already done 4.5 years, had 6 months to go, and gave me the full 4-year backup. I was devastated. I was going to prison where I didn't feel I belonged. I was going to prison for doing what I knew was the right thing. I was going to prison where no one would visit me. And I was going to prison where my fiance would stop writing me within a month. My public defender never brought up that I had checked myself into rehab, that while I was in county, a friend had picked up my paycheck and cashed it and paid my arrears to where I was current before I got to court. Back at county that night, with tears in my eyes, I kept asking myself, why is this happening to me? I did the right thing. I got help. Nobody made me do it. That's when I heard the voice in my head. It was my voice, but not my words. It said, I put you here because you put material things before me. The voice was right. I've been a supervisor at a box plant for 20 years and worked 60 to 80 hours a week. Every weekend I had my daughter, I would have to work most of the time. This upset her. She was the light of my life, my reason for living. I resigned my job and went to horseshoeing school. Good money, flexible hours. Within 2 years, I was doing very well. Traveling, staying in hotels. I had money to burn, and I did burn it. 2 anvils, 2 forges, welders, power tools. I didn't need over 1,000 books, best cookware, movies, music. Horse trainers across the country knew my name. But most important, I had time for my daughter. At age 12, she made it very clear that she was unimpressed and wanted nothing to do with me. The one person I lived for didn't want me. I made the decision to start drinking to kill the pain. I was in depression. I started losing my clients, and that's what happens when you watch the phone ring but can't bring yourself to answer it, when you don't show up for appointments. It was never the quality of work. It was the lack of accountability. When you lose your clients, you fall behind in your child support. At prison in diagnostics, the guy in the bunk below me was a lay minister, and he would do a nightly Bible reading with me. When I got to camp, I would go to chapel 5-6 times a week to escape the noise and the sociopaths. It was my sanctuary. I gave my life to Jesus there in November of 2009. I never knew another hungry day in prison. The other inmates seemed to overlook me when they wanted trouble. The guards seemed to look past me. I finally felt safe, and I wasn't afraid. The minimum of 4 years for first-time nonviolent is 7 months. That December, I was notified I was being released on January 15, 2010, without a parole hearing, after a little over 4 months. I had nothing when I got out, but I was able to home plan just north of town here. And I was going to AA, I was working, back on my meds, seeing my psychiatrist, but I'm afraid again, and I'm riddled with guilt. When you're drowning in guilt and shame, the world can get real big, and you can get real small. I was afraid to be outside. I was reading my Bible, but I missed the assembly of my brothers in Christ. I had to find a Bible study. And it was a Tuesday. I drove by every church in town, and the only church that had anybody there was First Baptist Church, Odessa. There was a truck outside in a parking lot, and that's the day I met Rick Barker. He said they had a men's group meeting that night, and he thought that they were talking about Paul's imprisonment. I remember Tim Asher led the lesson that night. I had finally found my sanctuary. I still struggled for a period of time. I wasn't drinking, didn't want to drink, but things still weren't right. Then I realized I had asked the Lord to heal me and take the alcoholism away. He did. I asked him to forgive my sins and let me be born again in him. He did. One of my favorite verses is Psalms 103, verse 12. It says, "As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us." If Christ is in all his glory could forgive me my sins, my past, and love me, then it's okay for me to forgive myself. When I did, that's when the chains fell away. Along with the need for psychiatrists, medication, and along with all my fears. I could accept that every bad thing that had happened to me in my life was a result of my own conscious decisions. People still ask me about, well, what happened to all the stuff you lost? And I tell them I didn't lose anything. I traded it all to get sober and find Jesus. And I think I got the best end of the deal. Thank you very much.